Soukaku is one of the best characters that ZenlessZoneZero has to offer. She's free, she can give an ally 1000 attack, she has no weaknesses whatsoever, right? Wrong. Today we'll be breaking down why Soukaku is definitely amazing, what her best build is, her best teams and more, but most importantly we're going to break down why you might be playing Soukaku wrong and getting punished for it. As always though, before we get into it, remember to like, comment, turn on the notification bell and subscribe. Let's break things down. Soukaku is a great utility and support to the team. Plain and simple. The attack that she provides is universally good, and if you're using an ice-based team, the rest of her kit becomes even better. But before we get too specific on teams, let's talk about her base stats. Comparing Soukaku's stats to Lucy makes the most sense since they're both supports and scale with attack. On that note, she does have a higher attack base. The rest of her stats are pretty comparable with minor differences in anomaly mastery and anomaly proficiency, but these are both characters who would ideally build crit later, so this isn't that important. Now let's talk about Soukaku's core passive. It reads, when Soukaku launches Fly the Flag, her attack increases by 20% up to 500 for 22 seconds. When consuming Vortex during Fly the Flag, her attack increases doubled up to a max of 1000. This buff can be passed along to characters switching in via quick assist or chain attacks triggered by Fly the Flag, and it refreshes the duration of the buff. This is the main reason that Soukaku is used as a support. The attack buff itself is not very complicated, however there are a few important things you need to know before we dive into this amazing skill. The first thing we need to explain is Soukaku's special resource. Similar to characters like Ellen or Juyuan, Soukaku has a unique resource known as Vortex stacks. These stacks are used to enhance Fly the Flag. If you do not consume these Vortex stacks before using Fly the Flag, her attack buff is half as effective and caps at 500. So on that note, let's talk briefly about obtaining Vortex stacks. Currently, there are 3 ways to get them. You receive 1 when using Soukaku's EX special attack, 1 when using her chain attack, and 3 when using her ultimate. The most realistic and comfortable way for you to get these though is through special attacks and chain attacks. Keep in mind however that you will only consume Vortex stacks when you have 3 total and perform Fly the Flag immediately after. Now before we leave the topic of Vortex stacks, let's talk about her additional ability since it also impacts the way that they work. Soukaku's additional ability increases the ice damage of the squad by 20% for 22 seconds, assuming you have a character who shares the same attribute or faction as her and consumes Vortex while they are on the team. This is clearly aimed to buff Ellen and potentially Lycone, but keep in mind that we don't currently have any characters who share a faction with Soukaku at the moment, so it will be hard to satisfy this requirement unless you are directly pairing her with Ellen, Juyuan, or Lycone. Now regarding Soukaku's basic attacks, they are split into 2 forms, each with 3 parts to their combos. The first is the physical damage form, but it has very low multipliers and is not worth doing at all. The second form is the Frosted Banner variation, and by contrast it has some of the best multipliers. Now with that, let's break down her attacks in the ice form. The first attack is this combo in an upward slash. Following this is her second attack where she performs a spin and overhand swing. The third and final attack is a combination of spins with a final downward swing to end the combo. The third basic attack also has the highest damage multiplier of all the basics, and therefore this is what you will want to focus on if you want high damage on Soukaku. Now based on the skill information for Soukaku, this should be the final attack in the combo, but she actually has an undocumented 2 extra swings that deal ice damage. I'm not exactly sure what the multipliers are on these 2 attacks, but from my testing they do slightly less damage than her first and second basic attacks. Now let's talk about her special attacks. Soukaku's special attacks are broken up into 3 different variations and forms. Each of these have their own days and days multiplier, but let's quickly break down each form. The first is the unenhanced flag swinging special attack, and this is pretty awful. Don't do this, it's not worth it. The second form is fanning mosquitoes, and you can identify this by Soukaku, well, imitating what you would do when you swat at mosquitoes. It does have decent damage multipliers, but ultimately it's just used to get Vortex stacks. The final part of Soukaku's EX special attack is Rally. This is the part where Soukaku sticks her weapon into the ground, consumes Vortex stacks, and gives attack to herself. During the animation where the flag is being stuck into the ground, a glowing alert will show up on screen and allow you to quick assist to the next character on your team. If you perform this character who you swap to will now have the attack buff on them instead of Soukaku. Side note for DPS Soukaku enjoyers, consuming all Vortex stacks and entering the Frosted Banner state will give you 6 enhanced basic attacks, which is extremely important if you want to do damage with her. And now as usual, Soukaku's ultimate is not worth using if you have a proper damage dealer. If you're pairing her with Ellen, Soldier 11, Juyuan, any crit based carry, etc., don't use her ultimate. However, since we're already talking about it, let's take a look at what it has to offer. Soukaku's ultimate does do a lot of damage, but it also increases her crit rate by 15% for 15 seconds. The big thing to remember here, however, is that allies who are on Soukaku's team after the team is cast will also receive 10 energy. The next character who is swapped to immediately after Soukaku's ultimate will receive double that energy, and this might seem familiar. This bonus is present on all supports ultimates in ZenlessZoneZero, but unlike with Rina, Soukaku's typical squad members have high value ultimates that do great damage. The rest of Soukaku's abilities and skills like her dodge and assist are similar to other melee focused characters since they deal decent daze and damage, but we actually need a moment to talk about her chain attack specifically. The attack itself has a decently high damage multiplier and an equally strong daze multiplier, but it has a problem. It takes a really long time to do. Now the reason for this is because she swings a few times in front of her, but is also forced to cast the full fly the flag animation. Normally this wouldn't be a bad thing since fly the flag provides attack to Soukaku and she can transfer this buff to another character, but the animation is so long that there are players who argue that avoiding her chain attack entirely is better than taking the time to do it at all. Before I go any further, however, I do want to talk about Soukaku specifically and chain attacks involving her. Yes, Soukaku's chain attack is very long and does take a lot of time to perform. However, ending with your support and allowing them to cast their EX special attack can be extremely valuable, especially if you're using Starlight Engine. Furthermore, not using Soukaku's chain attack at all can be bad since you would then have to use her ultimate to activate Swing Jazz's 4-piece passive. In some cases, using Soukaku's chain attack earlier as opposed to later is better if you don't have Starlight Engine equipped, but ultimately ending with Soukaku will result in a more comfortable experience. To be clear, many of the optimal combos or optimizations are definitely good if you can pull them off, but also consider that this is an action combat game where attack frequency and boss skills play a huge part in what is possible or viable. Now with chain attacks and disclaimers out of the way, let's talk skill priority. Soukaku as a support will definitely prioritize her EX special attacks first, her chain attack second, then end things with their basic assist and dodge. But a main DPS Soukaku will prioritize their basic attack equally to their special and chain attacks and finish things off with their assist and dodge. If you're just using her as an attack buffer, she doesn't really need much investment here, but be aware that she does eventually end up doing respectable side damage later, assuming you reach her endgame build, which I'll talk about in a bit. But now it's time we talk about Soukaku's combos. Once again, if you're simply using her for fly the flag and the attack increase, this section will be quick and simple. There isn't really a boss combo or non-boss combo for a supportive Soukaku, so here's what you can focus on instead and a trick to make things easier. Fly the flag requires 3 vortex stack to provide its enhanced 1000 attack, so starting any encounter in Shiyu defense by using your EX special before the fight starts will make things smoother. For whatever reason, you're able to use skills and abilities before enemies spawn when you're in the safe zone, so using EX special attacks in this section can actually save you time, especially if your Soukaku has very little to no damage at all. Once in combat though, performing a chain attack with Soukaku after she has 2 vortex stacks will give her the third and final stack needed to perform a max enhanced Soukaku buff. This is perfect for Soukaku because she generates 1 stack when she waves her flag at the start of her chain attack, and then she consumes it at the end of her chain attack when she plunges her weapon into the ground. This process is repeated throughout the fight so she can give attack buffs to her team, but at this point you may be wondering when she'll be using her EX special attack during the fight at all. Unfortunately, the hidden / secret tech that I mentioned earlier will only work at the start of a fight, and otherwise Soukaku is forced to simply use her EX special attack at any point before the boss is stunned. But now let's talk about DPS Soukaku. She has 2 different combos and approaches to combat, and it mostly depends on whether you're fighting a boss. Before I break this down, do know that almost all of Soukaku's damage when she is a DPS comes from her Frosted Banner state or from performing a chain attack. Since this is the case, the goal for Soukaku will always be to get 3 vortex stacks, perform fly the flag, and then use her ice attacks for high damage. For her non-boss enemy combo, using Soukaku's EX special attack to interrupt or clump enemies together is the best option she has. This also provides her with the stacks that she needs to later enter Frosted Banner state, but there's a problem here. Before Soukaku has her frosted attacks, her damage is extremely low and punishing to perform. Since that is the case, stunning an enemy with your Dazer and giving Soukaku the third and final vortex stack through her chain attack is actually your best choice here. So put simply, use 2 EX special attacks against any non-boss enemy and then swap to your Dazer to stun the monster and use Soukaku's chain attack. If the monsters are still alive at this point, or if you are fighting a boss, Soukaku should be in Frosted Banner state and has a damage combo that she can swap to as well. well. Truthfully, just using her basic attacks at all will perform nicely and give you decent damage, but her other combo is pretty easy to perform and does decent damage too. All Soukaku needs to do is dash attack and perform her basic attacks afterwards. It's that simple. After the final swing of her basic attack is completed, perform another dash and repeat as many times as possible. The main advantage to doing this is avoiding the first low damage basic attack swing that takes up time and does little damage. However, you do also gain a decent amount of mobility from consistently dodging while also pushing out damage. Depending on the scenario, the full combo string can be useful, but equally so, this dash attack combo is great too. Soukaku has a few different sets she can use best, but ultimately your luck when upgrading disk drives will be what determines which effect to use. For supportive Soukaku, Swing Jazz as the 4-piece set is definitely the highest performer, since most teams pair Soukaku with crit-based damage dealers. But I have been hearing about an anomaly-focused Soukaku to make use of Shatter, and therefore use Freedom Blues. Unfortunately, I am not super familiar with it, but the idea from what I understand is to take advantage of the Freeze anomaly crit damage and its Shatter effect instead of Swing Jazz. For her 2-piece set, Hormone Blues is definitely a fantastic option, considering Soukaku wants to reach the 2.5k attack threshold, but keep in mind that reaching this number will become easier with more investment into the character, and therefore you may find better value in swapping this set later. Before I talk about DPS Soukaku's set, I do want to remind you all that most 2-piece set effects are equivalent to roughly 3 substat rolls, which means that having a really bad 2-piece set may not be worth it even if it's on the right set. This does not apply for stats that are unattainable in substats like Swing Jazz's energy regen or Shockstar Disco's impact effect. So for a utility Soukaku, running 4-piece Swing Jazz with 2-piece Hormone will definitely work great and is also what I recommend for players trying to build Soukaku. Now for DPS Soukaku, Polar Metal, Woodpecker, or even Puffer Electro all perform well considering Soukaku's game plan, but the thing that makes each build unique or strong is the scenario that you are fighting in. In shorter fights, for instance, Puffer Electro performs better because you have less time spent without using Soukaku's ultimate, but for longer fights, not having her ultimate will drastically decrease its performance. For her 2-piece set effect, choosing any of these sets that aren't the 4-piece set effect works fine. Polar Metal stands out from the rest since the DPS it is farmable from also gives a decent alternative set. My recommendation therefore is 4-piece Polar with 2-piece Woodpecker, especially since this is a set that is universally used across all damage dealers. Now regardless of which Soukaku you are using, her optimal W engine will be her own. For Buffer Soukaku, the ice damage increase in addition to the attack to all allies is huge for its performance, and aside from this, it's also an A rank. I won't include too much about how easy or how hard each W engine is to get, since this is mostly a performance-based review, but a lot of the support W engines are tough to get since they're locked behind gachas or are on the battle pass. This is actually a big problem for players who aren't pulling as frequently, since your alternatives are Unfettered Game Ball, Slice of Time, Mark II, Mark III, or just spending money. Unfettered Game Ball does do pretty well for Soukaku, but it does require you to buy the battle pass. Slice of Time gives you pen ratio and increased energy plus decibel generation, but this simply does not compare to the attack percent increases from the other W engine. Finally, if you want to take a look at the B rank W engines, their main sets sometimes don't even make sense for the support or don't fit the team composition that you're using your support on. Lots of problems here, but ultimately all these options will still perform decently so long as you mix and match. For DPS Soukaku, your one and only choice, as I mentioned previously, is Bashful Engine, and this is because of the ice damage that it provides, where no other W engine will give you nearly as much damage. It is unfortunate that this W engine is also locked behind pulling on a gacha banner, but Kaboom the Cannon will also suffice if you manage to find that too. Moving on to Soukaku's stats and build, she's looking for a few things regardless of her role on the team. The most important stat line for her to reach is 2500 attack so that she can give the maximum value from her Fly the Flag buff, but here's where things get interesting. If you invest enough into Soukaku, she can actually hit 2500 attack very easily. Since this is the case, switching out some of her main stats on her disk drives is a great idea. Energy regen on her 6th slot, if you feel you are lacking in it, is a fine optimization, but choosing to run a crit rate 4th slot disk drive can also be fantastic for your team's overall damage. Something worth mentioning about supports and utility characters in general for ZenlessZoneZero is that most of them also have no reason to build health or survivability. Since this is the case, choosing to find crit rate, anomaly proficiency, or any sort of damage will be the end goal for these characters. This is also the case for their substats, and even utility Soukaku will end up winning crit rate, attack percent, and crit crit damage as her ideal roles. For other characters like Nicole, it's anomaly proficiency and anomaly mastery as their main focus, but for Soukaku, having crit rate on 4, attack percent on 5, and attack percent on 6 can be amazing since she does do a decent amount of damage herself. A sample build for Soukaku once she's fully invested in it will look like the following: 2500 attack, 50 crit rate, 100 crit damage, and at least 1.72 energy regen, assuming you have Swing Jazz on. Now let's address her Mindscapes. Soukaku thankfully has some of the best Mindscapes in ZenlessZoneZero, which is terrific because she's free. In terms of which stand out, however, her first, fourth, and sixth are game changing. Her first Mindscape increases the overall duration of her ice damage increase to the team by 8 seconds. Her fourth reduces ice resistance by 10% for 8 seconds. And her sixth gives you double the enhanced attack she would otherwise get from using a fully stacked Fly the Flag. These are all amazing Mindscapes, but do know that the first Mindscapes are definitely aimed at improving buffer Soukaku's value, where the sixth is more for DPS Soukaku. Regardless, these are mostly stat increases and affect how much damage she gives or deals, but they are valuable nonetheless. For our final section, I want to talk about a few potential Soukaku teams that I found to perform very well. The first is Ellen, Lycone, Soukaku, and I'm surprised because I don't think I've ever seen anyone ever talk about it before. Jokes aside, saying this team synergizes perfectly is an understatement since every character boosts each other's damage by a large amount. At ZenlessZoneZero's launch, this team felt one of the most complete and fun teams to play since they all had ways to complement each other. The ice defense shred, the ice damage increase, the attack buff, all of these are super important factors to consider on the team, and they result in one of the highest damage dealing compositions in the game. The next team I wanted to talk about is Soukaku, Ambi, and Nicole. To be clear, this is the maximum free to play team with DPS Soukaku, but it actually does pretty well. And the current Shiyu defenses, having a character to vacuum or clump enemies together is extremely valuable, and Soukaku Nicole does this the best. Soukaku's Vortex alongside Nicole's Black Hole force any non-boss enemies to instantly get interrupted and forced into a location, which is perfect for setting up a damage combo. The defense shred and stun from Ambi is also very valuable since a stunner plus buffer slash debuffer are a must-have for crit based teams, and they activate each other's additional abilities. These are fantastic reasons to use this team for a DPS Soukaku composition, but all of this is without talking about the biggest benefit of all: they're given to you for free. The final thing worth mentioning here is less of a team and more of a concept. Lycone and Soukaku are honestly so powerful by themselves that you can pair them with almost any attack character and do well. Piper, Corrin, Billy, you name it, these two characters will definitely do well with them. That being said, they will of course do worse than an Ellen, Lycone, Soukaku team composition, but the two alone provide attack increases and stun multiplier increases, which is already super valuable against bosses currently present in ZenlessZoneZero. Side note, Lycone can be replaced by Rina in some cases for her use this team anytime combo, but having a stunner is super valuable, and Lycone is one of the best since he also buffs their damage. Now, as a short final section of giving tips and advice, I do believe that Soukaku is one of the best buffers in the game, but she's been overanalyzed a bit. Yes, there are some instances where using her chain attack can be bad for your team, but without it, you can't take advantage of Swing Jazz. Additionally, although some will argue that using a chain attack will require too much time, trying to plan out the perfect combo optimization special hidden tech can backfire and ultimately cause you to lose damage instead. Overall, there are strengths and weaknesses to this, but I do believe that Soukaku is a pretty simple character who's also very versatile, and that's why I believe her to be one of ZenlessZoneZero's best. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you again for watching. If you made it this far, I would appreciate it if you, I don't know, said I love you, Connor, in the comment section. That'd be pretty cool. Anyways, thanks again for watching, guys. If you enjoy content like this, again, make sure to check out the rest of my socials. I will see you all next time. Stay safe, stay healthy, everyone. Good night.